the studio. Let me give you a tour.
So you're still using paintbrushes?
I'm using paintbrushes and I'm using airbrush. And I built a round building.
Why round?
Round had actually never occurred to me, and I started the project with a builder in mind. He asked me what I was thinking of, and I said, well, here. And I pulled out about 30 drawings of various rectangular and square rooms. And he said, oh, yeah, okay. And he went away, and he said, I'll come back in 2 weeks with my own sketches. And he came back with like 4 sketches, you know, variations. 3 of them were like variations on what I gave him. And then there was this round one, and I went, oh, shit, no, I'm not doing that. And I threw it out, you know. I said, I'm going to lose square footage. And, you know, after he went, I went and picked it up again, and I started looking at it, and I came out and looked at the space, which was sort of limited, and I said, you know, I'm a guy that makes square boxes. It might be kind of ethereal to make them in a round room. So I just said, why not? I think I'll build a round room.
What is this going to be when you're done with it?
This is going to look like a stack of lumber, large lumber.
So each of these is like a cut tree?
Like a cut tree, exactly,
wow.
Like wood. I've always painted images of things that are hollow, like boxes.
Okay.
And
this one's solid, but the back's empty.
Yeah. So you can see that it's still, you know, when you come to the back, it's a painting, but it's going to be a painting of something that looks solid and substantial, made out of wood. I mean, I've been accused of never painting a natural thing.
Oh, yeah, synthetics.
Not that I react to accusations, but
So this is your environmentalist phase.
Yeah. It started because I was driving around and I saw this crate that somebody had thrown out, and I liked it, so I brought it home, and it looked like a rifle crate, and I made a painting of it. You know, I said, kind of, you know, I can paint cardboard and I can paint steel. I bet I could paint wood too. So I made this painting of a crate, and everybody said, oh man, that's great. You know, they really liked it. Got a nice positive response, and then I made a couple more, and then I was driving to LA, and I was stuck on the freeway, and this big lumber truck comes right next to me, and then, you know, we're both sitting there along with about 500,000 other cars, and I'm looking at the ends of the lumber, and I'm thinking, gee, maybe I could do something like that, you know, instead of painting boxes or crates. So that's how the idea struck me. And then what I was telling you earlier about I said, oh, but then I got to paint those parts that are cut, and that's such a hassle. And then it occurred to me to what I was telling you about molding or casting the paint. So come over here, a mold I made of the piece of an end cut of wood, and it's got the paint in it right now. The paint is dry, so I'm going to show you how this works. So here comes the paint. So this is the paint, and it has an impression of the end of the lumber.
Wow.
And then this will go like this. And then I attach it by putting a heavy coat of paint and then just pushing it into the paint. So it's all paint.
Paint on paint.
It's paint on paint. Everything that meets the eye will be paint.
What is the significance of 3-stack? Would you have the primary colors here?
The significance is that I was painting these cardboard boxes.
Oh yeah.
And I started like putting one on top of the other. If I could, you know, maybe I could make a sculpture out of my paintings. And then when I shifted my imagery to wood, I just continued with the stacking concept. And I thought I could introduce color. Because they color code the end of the wood. And
like what?
This is the first one I've done, so this is sort of an experiment.
Wow.
So, you know, I'll try some others.
How do you do the knot holes here?
Well, they're painted by hand.
Wow. So you're just doing the knot holes? I mean, I mean, do you use a reference? I mean, how do you imagine?
I have a piece of wood I bring in, and I look at it.
Wow.
So one of the things I've experienced with Dan's work is that they're so well made and so technical that people sometimes get stopped at the surface just because they marvel at how and also why somebody would make something like this. This is essentially conceptual artwork. It always starts with an idea. And it's an idea that's been informed by Duchamp's ready-made idea, the idea of Jasper Johns saying, you know, here's the formula. You take a thing, you do something to it, you do something else to it.
Even though it's something we see and handle and touch every day, it's not really scrutinized. We scrutinize, say, the human face. We look at it every morning in the mirror, and we look at our friends when we're talking with them and our colleagues when we're talking with them. So we scrutinize the human face. So I said, well, I'm not going to be painting a figurative painting of a human face, for example. There are others who are doing it quite well, and I want to do something that is removed from that kind of scrutiny, something that is seen but not looked at closely.
So there are three large qualities that an artist needs, I think, to produce great work: imagination, skill, and anxiety. Some people get actually bothered when they come and see these works. In the beginning, I was kind of curious about that, and I said, well, why would this bother you? And they said, because why would somebody spend so much time and effort to make things that look like I get every day and I'm about to toss and things like that? And that's part of the anxiety portion of this equation. And it's one of the things I really love about Dan's work is that, and he means this, he means to confound people with the expectations about what this is. Is it a painting? Is it a sculpture? Is it an abstraction, or is it realism or hyperrealism? And it tends to confuse people, and therefore it tends to make people have to think about things, and that's always a good thing.
And this is just to get the corrugation furrow straight. And I don't want it to look like it's something that's been masked off. So we'll go back with, I become a wild and crazed abstract expressionist and hurling the paint and scumbling it. And so I sat here all day doing this, listening to Miles Davis. And I come out and I can't even talk to people because I'm so in the zone, I guess you'd call it. When you don't talk to anybody, when you're in the studio and you're just by yourself, you know, you actually lose, or I lose possession of language. I come out at the end of the day and I go to talk, and my voice is hoarse, and it's very strange. When I came back from my first show in New York in 1975, I wanted to paint something other than photorealism, and I wasn't quite sure what it was going to be. Something that was plentiful were scraps of cardboard and cardboard boxes that were always littering the doorway to my studio. So I took in cardboard. I didn't know what to do with it, so I cut it up, put it on the floor, and then I painted on it with watery paint. Then I photographed it, because that's what I did then, photorealism, and made a painting of this construction of, I think, 10 pieces of cardboard that I painted on. And I didn't like it when it was done, because it didn't read as anything except maybe burnt toast. It didn't look really attractive.
Well, you got the cardboard side right here is pretty accurate.
So I like pushed the paint over the edge, and I started replicating the edge of the cardboard. And then I said, well, why don't I just paint one piece of cardboard? So if we go over here, this is a painting from 1976 where I removed all of the expressive paint marks that I was putting on and I also didn't cut it up and make a collage or a construction. In fact, this was the bottom of a boot box. I bought a pair of Fry boots to wear to New York for my first show. So when I came back, I made a painting of the bottom of the box. The next painting after this, I eliminated the corrugated sides and painted a dimensional box. So I've retained these paintings because they were transitional paintings. It looks like a locker.
Yeah.
And
It's a big painting.
it's, you know, like the painting is like 4.5 feet tall and 3 feet wide, and one of the doors looks like it's slightly ajar.
Yeah.
And it's like old gray wood, and it was just an extension of, it was like the second or third wood painting that I made, and I just like conjured it up, and then I called it Canton, and later I found out that Canton, Ohio is where the Football Hall of Fame is, and somebody said, oh, this is an old football locker.
Wow.
And I said, the viewer always brings the content to the work, because that had never entered my consciousness while I was making this.
Would you spike the football in?
Well, I looked up the definition of Canton when I named it Canton, and it meant a collection. It referred to some province in China with more than one zone in it. So I thought, well, I've got more than one zone. There's 2 lockers in this, so it'll be called Canton. Then it became the Football Hall of Fame locker. I would paint an area like this, which you can see my finger, so it's about the size of a postage stamp, and that would take a long, long time, especially doing this little grid in here. I guess it's an app, I'm not quite sure. And you know, it becomes very frustrating when you're working that small and very time consuming, and I would become frustrated at the end of the day. I've covered, you know, something the size of a postage stamp, and then when I read Ezra Pound, he had a statement in there that said, slowness is beauty, and that's become my motto.
Where do you get the boxes from?
When I visit other artists, my friends, I usually look in their trash before I leave, and I take it out of their trash, then I bring it into my studio and turn it into art.
So what an artist gets rid of in their process is the core subject matter
Of my art. I don't know what that means. It's just very economical. And then I use very little paint, as I mentioned earlier, so,
Oh, man, you're
you know,
going
I am the electric vehicle of the art world.
2 drops of paint. He's got the whole side of the canvas.
Well, you saw how much paint, you know.
Yeah.
And look at, when I have an idea, I have to like sketch it out, and I mean real minimal, you know, just, so this is, you know, the ideas flow almost constantly. They're not all great ideas, but I have an idea, so I put it down on paper as simply and as directly as I can. It's just on these little notepads or whatever I have, and I just like to put them up. I'm only going to use maybe one out of these, or maybe none, until I get something that's good, or that I think will work. So I have these sketches, and look at, so I don't know how many, there's a bunch of them here, and this one here is the one the kind of like the simplest one is the one I've chosen to make over here in the large piece. Warhol was somebody that influenced me really early on. I had the good fortune of going to Pasadena City College in the mid-1960s, and we had a great art museum in Pasadena Art Museum, where I saw Marcel Duchamp in 1963, and then Walter Hopps, the curator, brought Warhol, Johns, Rauschenberg, and Lichtenstein in the early 60s, and the teachers teaching art history at PCC, we would just walk over to Los Robles Avenue where the museum was, and there I walked in and saw that stuff for the first time in my life, and that's where the epiphany for me took place. I think it was a Johns painting that had a hinge on it, and part of it was hinged off and laying on the floor of a map. And it was like bolts of lightning were arcing off of the painting and going into my chest and electrifying me. And I at that instant, I said, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. So it had a really profound effect on me, that museum. And they brought in all of those artists, and those were the artists that my aesthetic has been honed on, which are now the old masters.
They're the old masters of American art for sure. So do you don't consider yourself a pop artist though, do you?
No.
Because you've gone beyond, it's beyond popular culture. It's very mundane stuff, which I think is the poetry in your work.
Yeah. No, I was influenced by pop art, but I'm not a pop artist.
What was your first initial, what we would call these realistic paintings of yours?
The first paintings that I made professionally after I got my MA from Cal State Los Angeles were photorealistic paintings of swimming pools, backyards of swimming pools. They were all the same size, 5 foot by 7 foot. They would take 3 to 4 months to paint, and I got really lucky, and I had my first show was in New York in 1975 of those photorealistic paintings. For a while I painted cigar boxes. I painted about maybe 30 of them, some of them much larger. This is the only one that I've retained, this one here, and I retained it because it's about an artist. It's a Van Dyke cigar.
Oh, it's got portrait.
And it has a portrait of Van Dyke on the side, and the tapes and the labels, of course, are all.
Is a Van Dyke cigar? Is that a good cigar?
No, it's not.
Terrible cigar.
Terrible cigar. And this is an antique box. I have an antique cigar box collection, but it's not out.
Oh, okay.
And so I acquired the box as an antique, and then I made a painting based on the box.
Wow.
And that's it, right there.
So you're in the gallery in New York, and a woman sees your painting. What does she say?
She says, "Oh my, it looks so real." And I was struck with that comment because to me they never looked real. They looked so artificial, you know. And on the way home in the plane flying back to Los Angeles, my mind was like a cement mixer, just turning and turning and turning. And I said, I wonder if I could make something that really looks real, you know, that could become confused with reality itself. And so that was the initial thought process. My studio was in Long Beach at the time, and I used to enter and leave through an alley, you know, one of those early studios, you know what that's like. And all the other businesses were real functional businesses, a stereo shop, a clothing store, and they had their dumpsters out there. So I was always kicking boxes, you know, out of the way to get into my house. So I thought, if I'm going to do this, I have to choose something that has no inherent value, what I call the icon of expendability. Something, if I'm going to invest all this time and energy, you know, I can't recreate a fake diamond, because that's what they do in Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
Or in the movies. So I go, well, this stuff is right here. I'll take this. So I just picked it up, and I started first cutting up the cardboard, and I made a flat painting of cardboard, and I invited a friend over, and I said, what do you think of that? And he said, oh, you're sticking cardboard on the wall. And then he looked at the edge and said, oh, it's a painting, and you didn't do the edge very well.
So you wanted to be more realistic.
Yeah,
than that.
so I went back to the dumpster.
Source material.
Exactly. You know, closed my eyes and just stuck my hand in and came out with a box that was about 2 inches thick from the clothing store. So I took that into the studio and made stretcher bars to correspond to the box. And then instead of trying to paint the edge of a 1/4 inch thick sheet of cardboard, I had the edge of a folded box. So I think that was 1976.
Wow.
So that was the first box painting. I'm lighting this cigar now in honor of Ivan Karp, who was my longtime New York dealer for 30 plus years, and who also introduced me to cigars. Leche de Madre.
So you start sending images to Ivan Karp.
I'm going to go back just a little bit. When I was in grad school, I had like 2 or 3 hours between classes, and I would go to the John F. Kennedy Library at Cal State and look at art magazines. And this was in the early 70s, and the stuff that I liked in the reviews were all stuff that Ivan Karp was showing at his newly opened gallery, OK Harris. So I started sending him slides of my work, starting with my graduate show, and he would always write back. So when I started finally making these cardboard box paintings, I of course continued to send him slides of the work, and he would always respond and write back, and was encouraging, but still there was no show or no indication that he wanted to represent the work. So I got about 6 or 8 new paintings together, and I thought, I'm going to switch strategies, and I'm going to send him 8x10 glossies. I'm going to have them professionally photographed. So I sent him these glossies, and he really liked them. And his gallery director, a man by the name of Carlo Lamagna, had seen a show I had of the cardboard box paintings in Chicago in 1976 or 77, and he assured Ivan that they look as good in person as they do in the photographs. So I'd send him these 8x10s, and about 5 days later I get 2 envelopes in the mail on the same day from Ivan. One is dated one day earlier than the other, and I consult with my wife and I say, which one should we open first? And she comes up with the idea, let's open them in consecutive order. Open the first one first. And it said, basically it said, I like this work and would love to show it, but we have no openings and we're scheduled for 2 years. So, I've heard that before. And then I opened a second letter and it says, we've had a cancellation. Can you have stuff ready by October? And that was like, June or July. And of course, it said call the gallery, and I called and said, yes, I can. And so then I had my first show of the box paintings at OK Harris, and the show opened up sold out, which was pretty astonishing. And I went into Ivan's office, and he pushed a little piece of yellow paper towards me on the desk, and he said, you know what that is, kid? And I said, no. He said, look at it. And it had like 5 or 6 names on it. He said, that's your waiting list. So he said, what are you doing here? You need to get back to California and start making paintings.
Put you to work.
Yeah, put me to work. And that happened, the shows were scheduled every 2 years. And so for the first 2 years after that inaugural show that sold out, every painting I make, I would send to him, and it was sold or pre-sold.
Wow.
So I was sort of spoiled.
Uh-oh.